In a recent development, the Taliban has issued a new edict imposing harsh penalties such as public flogging and stoning to death for women accused of adultery in Afghanistan. Despite initial promises of a more open and moderate rule after coming to power in 2021, the Taliban's actions have drawn parallels to their regime in the late 1990s. Over the past 2 years, Afghan women and girls have faced increasing exclusion from public life, including access to education and recreational spaces like parks and gyms. This comes amid Afghanistan's deepening economic crisis and the looming threat of societal collapse. The plight of women in Afghanistan is expected to get worse. In this audio message, the Taliban's supreme leader, Haibatullah Akhundzada, announced that the group would begin enforcing its interpretation of Sharia law in Afghanistan, including reintroducing the public flogging and stoning of women for adultery. The Taliban regime has vowed to start public stoning of women to death if they commit adultery. This announcement comes as no surprise, as according to Afghan Witness, a research group monitoring human rights in Afghanistan, last year alone, the Taliban group ordered 417 public floggings and executions. So this new diktat hardly makes a difference. However, it shows that the Taliban have not changed and have returned to harsh punishments similar to those from the 1990s.
They have made an announcement by the head of the Taliban right now. So one has to look whether they are going to implement it or not. Like in the case of women's education, even this year they have not allowed girls above the age of 12 to go to the schools. So this is at a level of announcement, we have to look at it. But definitely not much has changed in the Taliban as far as the ideology is concerned. And some of us were always of the view that the ideology, the orthodox understanding of Islam and interpretation of Sharia as per their own orthodox understanding was always there in Taliban. It has not changed much from Taliban 1 to Taliban 2.
Taliban during their rule from 1996 to 2001 enforced a strict interpretation of Sharia law. Under the Taliban back then, women and girls were discriminated against in many ways for the crime of identifying as a girl. The women and girls of Afghanistan were banned from going to school or working. Healthcare was only accessible to them only when delivered by men. If a woman left the house, it was a full body veil, burqa, accompanied by a male relative. Women who suffered harassment and other forms of violence could end up being accused of moral crimes and adultery and risk being stoned to death as punishment. And Taliban 2.0 is no different than Taliban 1.0, as despite the claims made by Taliban to be moderate this time, once again, women and girls are erased from public and social life. Immediately after the Taliban took over in August 2021, women and girls took to the streets to protest, but were met with violence, arbitrary detention, and even killed. Since the Taliban have been back in power, women and girls have been banned from attending secondary school or working or appearing on TV or even just going to a park.
When they came, one of the issues, as I said, that they wanted an international legitimacy. So they have to show that there is certain changes within Taliban or in their ideology. But we have seen over the years, immediately after coming back, they have banned the girls' education, the women are not allowed to work, women are not allowed even to go out on their own. So they at least brought some of those earlier laws that were there at that point of a time in 1996. Yes, to show that they have changed, they have made certain kind of statements, but their statement has not matched their action.
Over the past 2 decades, Afghanistan made significant strides in human rights, democracy, gender equality, education, healthcare, and inclusivity. It served as a regional example with a thriving media landscape and open discourse. The literacy rate for women had increased from 17% in 2001 to 30% in 2021. The number of girls in school had increased from 2 million to 9 million, and women held 27% of seats in the Afghan parliament.
In the last 20 years, at least one thing that had happened in Afghanistan was women's right. Women were in the parliament, women were in the university, women were working. Now you cannot, and this is proved all over the world, that you cannot keep women inside and you think that your society will develop. If you debar them from schools and universities, then you are debarring at least half of your population. And this is realized by all over the world. So Afghanistan, by doing this kind of a thing, it's not only hampering its economic development but also the social development of Afghan society in the long run.
However, since August 15, 2021, uncertainty has prevailed, raising fears of human rights violations for activists, former government employees, women and minorities, as highlighted in a recent UNEMA report detailing over 50 decrees curtailing women's freedoms. According to the report, there has been an increase in police harassment in public spaces and further limited women's ability to leave their homes. 57% women in Afghanistan feel unsafe leaving the home without a mahram or male guardian. Today, Afghanistan is the only country where girls are banned from going to schools. A recent analysis by the UN Children's Fund, UNICEF, found that prohibiting girls from attending high school also has a financial cost, costing the nation 2.5% of its annual GDP. According to the UNICEF, if the 3 million girls in the current cohort finished secondary school and entered the workforce, the Afghan economy would grow by at least $5.4 billion. However, it appears that under the current circumstances, their contribution is headed towards zero.